Albany. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here. My name's Cecile. I'm from the WA Marine Science Institution, and my colleague Annalie Harry is also watching in, and we're very lucky to have Brodie Elsdon with us, joining us from Albany. So we've got Perth, from Busselton, Perth, Busselton, Albany, all connected. Now, a little bit about Brodie Elsdon. She'll talk about her very interesting career, but she is a PhD candidate at Curtin University's Centre for Marine Science and Technology, and she specialises in pygmy blue whale bioacoustics. And over the past 8 years as a marine scientist, Brodie has gained diverse experience across tourism, research, industry sectors, working within marine mammal teams at several environmental consultancies. She's involved in lots of groups which she will tell you about. One of them is called the Fat Whales Project, which I love the sound of. So enough from me. I'll hand you over to Brodie, and thank you again, North Albany, for joining us.
I'll just try share my screen. Let us know if that's working.
I can see it, Brodie. Yeah, looks good.
Okay, amazing. Well, yeah, thank you for the introduction, Cecile. Shout out to WAMSI, so Annalie and Cecile for making this happen, and for Mr. Ireland as well for letting me crash your science class today. And hello, students at North Albany Senior High School. Thanks for having me here. I'll try to keep it interesting and keep you all awake. I know it's still quite early in the morning. But before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians and owners of the land and seas where I conduct my research, so the Budjerah and the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I recognise their deep and enduring connection to land and sea country. My thesis is actually combining two distinct areas of research, so sociocultural evaluation and marine bioacoustics. These topics don't usually go hand in hand. My goal is to use a more of a holistic approach to science. By doing this, I aim to back up my acoustic findings with a broader perspective, addressing the ecological and human factors that influence marine conservation. Ultimately, this approach helps to fill critical knowledge gaps between social science and applied science, ensuring that both fields can work together to improve policy and management strategies for the conservation of species like the pygmy blue whale. But rather than go too deep into the technical details today, I'll try to keep things a little bit more fun and interactive. So we'll explore the world of underwater noise and focus on species that you guys encounter in the Great Southern and also here in the Nari Capes Marine Park. So that stretches from Augusta right through to Busselton, and I'll give you a brief overview of my thesis and my career thus far. I just wanted to put this up. So what does all this jargon mean? Basically, blue whales, along with many other species, are facing mounting threats, including noise, overfishing, climate variability, with their interactions with a changing environment, potentially leading to altered migration patterns and essentially then mismatch of their prey sources. But before I get into it, I'll just give you a little bit of information about me. I was born in Freo. I moved to New Zealand when I was about 10 years old. From there, I found out pretty soon on a holiday back over here to see my dad. He took me to Broome, and I actually got to go to one of the pearl farms, and I dissected a pearl out of one of the clams, and I just thought that was incredible. How is jewels coming out of the ocean? And since then, it kind of shaped how my career pathway has taken place, and it made school very easy knowing what you want to do. But New Zealand water's probably much like Albany. It's really, really cold. So I wanted to move back to WA. So I did that after high school in New Zealand, moved back to Curtin University, where I did a double degree in marine and environmental science. At the time, compared to now anyway, there weren't many jobs available for marine science. So I thought adding that environmental science degree would help my job prospects. And looking back, though I haven't done too much there, it's definitely come in handy, as many of the skills that I acquired from that degree have complemented some of the consulting work that I've done. And I only bring that up just as you guys are probably in your last few years of school trying to figure out what career pathway you may want to take. And it's always good to know your options and ask questions. And there's another way, using Marine Industry Mentoring Network, which my friend in the photo there that I graduated with and I created, but I'll talk about that more later. But after my undergrad degree, we were both a bit lost actually as to what to do next, and we wanted to seek, new opportunities and skills, but we didn't really know where to do that. And then I was fortunate to come across a project at CMST, or the Centre for Marine Science and Technology at Curtin Uni, where I am now. And I got to do an honours project there, which was focused on southern right whale photo ID and habitat use down in the southwest. At the time, I was living in Perth, but I thought it was so cool and beautiful down here. And I was able to do some field work, which was amazing. So I went out on one of the tourism vessels out of Augusta. I collected ID shots of southern right whales, and it was really rough, and it's definitely not for everyone down there in winter. It's probably similar around where you guys are. But fortunately, I'd grown up on boats, and my dad reckons that I had found my sea legs before I could walk. So I really loved the field work. And this was where I got my first real taste of marine mammal research, and I was hooked. Though after honours, I needed a job, and I'd been studying for quite a while. New Zealand has year 13, so you're lucky you don't have to do that. And then, straight on to undergrad and then honours. So I actually went back to the whale watching boat and I pestered them for a job, and that's where I became their onboard marine biologist. And I absolutely loved this job. I was chasing whales nearly all year round. There was humpbacks and southern rights in Augusta, minkies and blue whales as well in Dunsborough, and then my favourite part, the Bremer sub-basin in summer, working with killer whales, pilot whales, sperm whales, all your big marine megafauna. And this was a really good stepping stone to begin a career in marine mammal research. And after about 3 seasons there, I was ready for a bit of a change. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back into academia or more tourism, maybe in a different area, but I ended up applying for a PhD because I thought that the long sleepless nights were just, I was addicted to them. And here I am studying whales again. And it's been the most amazing whirlwind of an experience so far. But throughout the time as well, during my PhD, I've worked in other areas of the industry. One, just to break up a bit of the monotony of the PhD and also gain experience, but then as well to keep me financially afloat. So over the past 5 years, I've been an active marine fauna observer and training instructor for various offshore projects. And I've also delved into marine and environmental consulting, working on a range of land and marine-based projects for a few years. And I also worked as a project scientist and bioacoustician at an underwater noise consultancy. And across all of these jobs, I've gained experience and skills that have been directly applicable to my PhD, and if only making it stronger as well. And for my research interests and part of the Marine Industry Mentoring Network, I'm a strong advocate for science communication and STEM, ensuring that research findings are readily accessible to the general public. Tourism and social media are a really powerful way and tool of doing this as well, that allows us to share findings that connect with simple, tangible actions, helping people feel empowered and make positive change in their environmental interactions. But going into underwater noise, so I thought I'd describe first, most simply, that the acoustic environment can be categorized into 3 main categories. So your biological noises, fish, whales, clicking shrimp, all sorts, and then your human-made or anthropogenic sounds. They're increasing rapidly from all our recreational uses, jet skis, boats, fishing charters to offshore development, which significantly contribute through seismic, drilling, pile driving, dredging, you name it. And then all of our geophysical sounds as well. That includes your wind, rain, earthquakes, and one of the huge contributors of ambient noise is actually any of you guys have a think of it, what it could be, it's breaking sea ice. It's really, really loud and contributes significantly, and those sounds are really, really strong and can travel vast areas of our oceans. But all of these sounds together contribute to the overall marine soundscape. This image here is a spectrogram, which is a visual representation of sound. So that's frequency over time. And this is a month-long snapshot at the Perth Canyon. This is a deep sea area off the coast of Rottnest Island. There's similar canyon systems all the way along the southern coastline, and they extend from the continental shelf to about 4 kilometres in depth. And this one at the Perth Canyon is a crucial feeding ground for the population of pygmy blue whales that migrate along the WA coast. However, here and many other areas are also seeing an increase in shipping activity. On this spectrogram, just at a first glance, you can see that the different types of sounds are often overlapping, particularly the low frequency calls of fin whales, and then blue whales you can see there as well. And they're persistent with the noise from shipping, which is quite broadband. And these overlapping sound frequencies are a prime example of how human noise can interfere with the communication of marine mammals. But I thought I'd keep it localized to begin with. The Great Southern, I'm sure as you guys know, and the Southwest is a great place to encounter whales. We're pretty lucky here. You can see them even from land. And each year, many species make the incredible journey between their feeding and breeding grounds, covering thousands of kilometres along our coast. It's actually one of the largest migrations of any mammal in the world. And these migrations for whales are critical as it allows them to access food sources in polar regions, as well as safe, warmer waters for calving and mating. Right now, at this time of year, it's the southern migration, which is a great place to encounter whales off the Bustleton coast around the side of the Cape here. Whereas for Albany and Chains, it's usually better to see them on their northern migration as they come closer to the shore and around that side of the coast. But when observing these animals, just looking at them at a glance, you can see the physical difference between the species just from their appearance. This is usually how we look at populations, through visual means. So, for example, we can differentiate species by looking at their morphology and their colours. So the underside of a humpback tail fluke is unique to each animal, just like our fingerprint. You can also look at nicks, notches and scarring on dorsal fin shape. For blue whales, you use the colour and pigment around their dorsal fin as well. And then southern right whales, those growths on their head are called callosities. And these are unique to every individual, just like our fingerprint as well. And these identifying features help us not only tell the species apart, but they also help us look right down to an individual level, which is great for population studies. But we aren't always lucky enough to collect visual data and be out in the field on boats or using drones. And that's where acoustics comes in. And we can distinguish between species just by listening to the unique sounds they produce. Each species has their own unique sounds. So just as you and I are talking, if your friend calls you up on the phone, you can almost tell their voice straight away. And this goes down to an individual level, which is the same. And we can do this with odontocetes or all our toothed whales. So your dolphins, killer whales, pilot whales, and sperm whales. But it's not the same for baleen whales yet. We haven't got to that level. We can just differentiate to a population level. So when you first look at these spectrograms here, they're a little bit different to the one I showed you before. You can look, or if you can see, the frequency is different for each animal, and so is the duration. So some of the species, for humpback, it's about 10 seconds there, a clip. Blue whales is a little bit longer, a couple of minutes. Blue whale with the frequency is really low frequencies. Humpbacks is more broadband, and then southern rights and minkies are somewhere in the middle. But I thought I'd give you a quiz to start you off. I don't know if you guys have any paper and pens available. Probably should have asked you before. But you can also do it in your head. I'm going to play 4 different sounds, and if you can just listen, I've given you a few little tips and try to figure out which one is which. And we'll see if this works the first time. It's usually not the case. So that was number 1. Keep in your head what you might think that one is. Number 2. Number 3. And last one. Okay, so now we'll go through the answers. Number 1 was the pygmy blue whale. 2 was the humpback. So they have the harmonics and the really big whoop sounds. 3 was the southern right. And 4, dwarf minke whale. When I first heard this one, I was like, there's no way that's a whale. It sounds so mechanical. And such a little animal making that sound, it's quite incredible. But each baleen whale, as I said, is characterized by its own stereotypical sounds, which we use to identify them. So you can listen, but it's also usually a lot easier for us to look at the spectrograms and the visual representations. It's thought that only male baleen whales produce the song, which is used to attract mates, but both males and females also make other sounds known as social sounds, or create decalls, which are used to communicate with each other and have foraging context as well. And this is where my research comes in. But I wanted to start off with a bit of a background about blue whales and then their valuing systems. And a question that comes up a lot for us in industry and science is why conserve whales and what's the value in doing so. These marine giants hold immense environmental value through the ecosystem services they provide us and possess incredible socio-cultural and economic significance. They support local economies through industries like whale watching, which is a multi-billion-dollar annual industry that supports developing nations. They're celebrated worldwide in many societies. They hold cultural, traditional, and spiritual significance, and they inspire us with their almost mystical aura. And they are also considered keystone species and ecosystem engineers. What does this mean? They play a crucial role in maintaining marine ecosystem balance, and they even act as indicators for overall ocean health. So they're pretty impressive. But you might be wondering why there is a photo of a blue whale fecal plume on the screen there. Did you know that blue whale poo provides the vital nutrients required for phytoplankton to grow? And phytoplankton produce around 50% of the world's oxygen. And then these nutrients then distributed across ocean basins throughout their migration, enhancing primary productivity and regulate climate by mixing ocean waters and even sequestering carbon. So what that means is they store carbon in their body throughout their lifetime, because blue whales can live to about 90 and they weigh over 100 tonne. They store immense amounts of carbon, up to, it's thought, 33 tonne per animal throughout their lifetime, which is said to be the equivalent of what trees of about 3 Amazon rainforests can sequester. They also, even once they die, contribute to climate regulation, as they store that carbon in their body for up to 100 years, and then their carcass acts as an entire ecosystem on the sea floor, which harbours chemosynthetic animals, so your bacterias, tube worms, anglerfish, things like that. So they continue to contribute even after they die. So they're quite impressive. I think we've established that they carry tremendous value across various sectors, but they unfortunately are under increasing pressures, whether that be marine industries, habitat degradation, and this one I find really whopping, the prey depletion. It's an older statistic, but over the past 20 years alone, over 40% of global krill stocks have been completely depleted. And this is the basis of our ocean food web. So a big question is, how do we manage this? How do we justify favouring one species like the blue whale over humpbacks that are repopulating and coming back to pre-whaling numbers? This is a big question. And we really need to assign real value to the various costs and benefits of whales. And that's what part of my research is doing, though I won't dive into that side of it too much today. But understanding the conservation value of this endangered pygmy blue whale population in Australia is part of my work. What we did at the start of my degree is put a survey out to the WA public to look at their perceived value of whales. Unsurprisingly, we found people love whales and they are willing to support them and their protection, both financially when possible, but also through other non-financial means, whether that was engaging with conservation groups, supporting research and education initiatives, or promoting local tourism. And there was also a really big sense of curiosity and wanting to know more, which was really promising. And using whales as a key species to understand the broader marine environmental issues is essential to be able to better define the socioeconomic value, which is the focus of my ongoing research that I will also be presenting my findings at the up-and-coming International Society for Marine Mammalogy Conference in Perth in November. So more to come there. But more background about pygmy blue whales. I'm sure you guys know from the Albany whaling station, blue whales are the largest animal to ever exist. Even though the pygmy blue whale, which I study, is the smallest of the subspecies, they still reach about 24 meters in length and weigh over 100 ton. Their tongue alone is 2 ton, and it's the size of an elephant. Unfortunately, due to their size and the demand for whale oil, their populations were completely diminished and to near extinction, with populations dropping to less than 1% due to commercial and then illegal whaling. As a result, and dissimilar to humpbacks that have almost fully recovered, blue whales remain endangered and data deficient globally. Now, this map here shows you the different acoustic populations of blue whales that span across the multiple subspecies. In the Southern Hemisphere, there are 7 acoustic populations alone, with the Indian Ocean having incredible diversity of acoustically and geographically distinct stocks of pygmy blue whale. In terms of their acoustics, blue whale repertoire consists of the 2 main sound types. So the song that's produced by males, and then the non-song sounds that I talked about briefly before, known as decalls. These songs are stereotyped across all of the different acoustic populations and are comprised of regularly repeated, really low frequency, so about 20 to 100 hertz, high intensity, about 180 decibels, which is the equivalent of a jet plane taking off, and relatively long duration units compared to other species. These low frequency calls are actually on the edge of human hearing threshold. So to be able to hear them properly, we have to speed them up by a factor of about 10. This raises the pitch and compresses the time. And these units can be produced individually, or there's also hybridized variants, or that they combine to create their song. And this is repeated for hours to days at a time. In contrast, the D calls are really short downswept sounds produced by both the males and females, and are likely used as contact calls between groups of whales with that social and foraging context. But my research focuses on the discrete population of pygmy blue whales known as the Eastern Indian Ocean pygmy blue. Bit of a mouthful. These guys migrate from their breeding grounds up in Southeast Asia all the way up past Australia, along the northwest shelf to their foraging grounds, way down our WA coast, and then branch out into the Antarctic subtropical convergence zone to their foraging grounds, which span the Indian and Southern Oceans. So it's quite a broad area. Their song consists of those 3 parts there that I was telling you about, and in the right conditions, they can be heard from hundreds and historically thousands of kilometers away because they're such a low frequency. Interestingly as well, the frequency of blue whale songs, along with other species like fin whales, have been steadily decreasing by a few tenths of a hertz per year since about 2002. In addition to the long-term trend, blue whale vocalizations are also show seasonal shifts in the frequency. This decrease in frequency could be for many reasons. We're not 100% sure yet, but it could be a response to increased ambient noise from human-made sources, but possibly also a result of more individuals communicating. So they are competing against each other, and that's attributing to the increase in background noise. And the longer the wavelength, the lower the frequency, and low frequency sounds require less energy to produce than high frequency ones. For whales, low frequency calls may be an energy efficient way to ensure their vocalizations can still reach those long distances. Getting into my methods, so passive acoustic monitoring, or PAM, is such a great tool for recording cryptic and highly elusive species such as the pygmy blue whale that are usually far offshore and spend majority of their life underwater. Though it does have its limits, the method is non-invasive and allows us to collect data on species when conditions aren't optimal for those visual surveys and for longer periods of time, which is really great. To do this, we deploy noise loggers on the seafloor at varying depths and different environments. They're not always maintained or put down by divers. Usually they go over the side of the vessel. They have weights on them, so they can go down to 1,000, if not more meters. And then they have an acoustic release, which we send down, and that releases the latch, and then they float back to the surface when we're ready to service and collect them. So you have to physically get this data back when they're moored to the seafloor. There are other techniques, but at CMST, we're really lucky because we have about 25 years of acoustic recordings from all around Australia. And these yellow dots are the locations where some of the recorders have been deployed off WA. For me, I'm using predominantly these moored acoustic recorders. One is located off Cape Lewin in about 1,000 meters of water. This is quite unique because it records continuously. We don't have to collect it. So I have 20 years at one site of constant recordings, which is huge and very time consuming to process if I were to do it manually. Fortunately for me, that's not the case. My supervisor has created an automated detector which speeds this process up by about 50 times. So it's really good. From this data, we then use acoustic analysis software to pinpoint pygmy blue whales' song based on their distinct vocalizations that I showed you to determine where and when they're present at any given time. And we can start to answer some key questions about the species. For me, I'm addressing knowledge gaps related to timing, variability and driving factors of pygmy blue whale migration over 2 decades. I actually came up with this question when I was working on the tourism vessels. Even just working out of Busselton and Dunsborough, we were seeing that the blue whales were migrating earlier and earlier each year, and I wanted to know if that was in fact the case or it was just something we were localized seeing. So I'll let you know once I know for sure. But it's pretty cool because by simply just listening to whales singing, vocalizing, communicating amidst this ever-growing noisy ocean, we can identify patterns in their presence and then their exposure to threats such as climate variability and noise pollution. This process also helps identify new important habitats along our coast that blue whales utilize for crucial life history phases. So they're feeding, migrating, and breeding. And these are key steps towards better management and protection for the species, which then also benefits us as humans as part of their ecosystem services that I talked about. So a bit of a summary. To date, I have detected over 600,000 pygmy blue whale calls and inferred migration metrics. So the start or the onset, peak, succession, the end, and the duration of acoustic detections as proxies for their presence. As I said, when they're calling, when they're not calling, it doesn't mean they're not there, and it's also only the males producing these calls. So we've started incorporating the non-song sounds as well. I've begun to compare these metrics across various sites and years throughout the range of their migration. And the next phase of my research will be to explore potential drivers of their migration timing and if there's any shifts, particularly looking at environmental factors such as the Indian Ocean Dipole and El Nino Southern Oscillation Index, but both influence ocean temperature and ecosystems, which are critical for blue whale migration. Since blue whales rely on food sources like krill, changes in the ocean environment caused by these climate systems can directly impact their movement and feeding behavior. And as I said earlier in one of the first slides, that mismatch to their feeding and foraging areas can have implications if they arrive and the food sources aren't there yet. Because part of the systems is the underwater currents. The really cool water is forced to the top 200 meters of the water column. And this is where the nutrients and phytoplankton plumes grow, and that's where the krill come. So if those systems aren't happening when they're used to being at a migration site, this could have implications. And we have seen some really unhealthy blue whales coming south that should have been feeding along their migration. So yeah, we're starting to see impacts, but this season so far, they've been looking very healthy, which is positive. And similar research conducted by CMST on humpbacks revealed that their population was arriving at the Perth Canyon earlier each season. And now it's time to look at whether it's that a case of their population increasing or is something else happening. And these findings have significant implications for informing regulatory decisions and supporting the conservation of whales in our waters. I just wanted to touch on what we've established. So the ocean is an acoustic world where marine mammals like blue whales rely on sounds for almost every aspect of their lives, whether it's communicating, finding a mate, orientating themselves, navigating their vast distances, or hunting for food. However, the underwater soundscape is rapidly changing. Ocean noise pollution, which is invisible and until recently often overlooked, but now it seems to be shining a light on these issues as it's on the rise and largely driven by global shipping and rapid expansion of multiple marine industries. But the cumulative impacts of noise pollution are a growing concern for marine science. This noise is not only difficult to quantify cumulatively, but it presents a steady increase affecting critical behaviours that can lead to temporary or even permanent impacts on marine mammals, whether that's noise exposure or vessel collision. Now, I just wanted to show you this snapshot. I only looked this up the other day on the Global Marine Traffic website. I thought it was a great way to visually demonstrate the usual invisible effects of ocean noise, as all of these little dots are different vessels around the globe at one moment in time that are on the water and that have AIS, so the automated identification system, and these are only required for vessels over 60 feet. So this doesn't even include all your smaller recreational vessels. And as much as they can, animals will try to adapt to environmental change. However, the difficulty arises when faced with both reduced population sizes, as is the case for blue whales, and sudden or persistent environmental changes. For instance, shipping noise can become so loud or frequent that whales cannot fully compensate for it, reducing their communication range. For blue whales, this means their ability to communicate over those vast distances is compromised, and even with adaptive responses, such as lowering the frequency of their calls to conserve energy and navigate through the noisy waters, they may still face significant challenges in maintaining their essential life functions, like finding a mate or coordinating their migration and looking for food. To put it in perspective, and on this graphic here, blue whales once communicated over vast areas of nearly the entire Atlantic Ocean prior to Industrial Revolution. However, with the rise in shipping noise, their communication range has been reduced by around 90%. For a species still recovering from whaling, this is a serious concern. But there is some good news. So around the world, there's multiple studies, some in Vancouver and Chile, that have implemented strategies to slow vessel speed and reduce noise pollution. And their studies have shown that reducing ship speed by about 10%, so not by a lot, can significantly lower underwater noise and reduce the chance of fatal collision and exposure by 40%. And a lot closer to home, similar work's being done at CMST by conducting similar research in the Coburn Sound, using AIS data, the seafloor mounted and hydrophones, to measure noise levels from different vessel types and the port activities. And by understanding these soundscapes and implementing strategies like speed reduction, we can better manage the impacts of our expanding ocean industries. And really quickly, I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, I thought it was really cool and a great example of how science can directly inform conservation action. This went viral a couple of years ago. I'll just play it. So the figure here shows a single blue whale, that blue dot, that's tagged as it navigates throughout its feeding grounds, and then it's overlaid with the shipping vessel traffic. This is a snapshot from a week. But given that blue whales only reproduce every few years, with calves taking over a decade to reach maturity, any fatality can seriously threaten the recovery to their population. And as this image only shows a brief look over a week, it just shows what blue whales face and the dangers they are exposed to on a daily basis, with up to 1,000 vessels moving through the area here at any one time. So as our marine footprint grows, the potential for interaction between ships and whales also rises with it. And the more data scientists collect, the clearer this picture can become. And despite the challenges of gathering data of these elusive creatures, our collective studies are laying the foundation for future conservation efforts. These informed actions like creating safe zones, known in Australia as BIAs, or biologically important areas. We can focus management on critical areas for their survival and include actions and extra monitoring from reducing shipping traffic during their key migration periods. And the in-depth understanding of species significantly improves the efficacy of conservation and management methods, offering hope for increased protection for these guys moving forward. So what is the significance of all of this? I've informed you about the current gaps in knowledge about and the potential threats that affect pygmy blue whales in WA. The pygmy blue whale is a species with high conservation priority and is recognised as endangered under the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, their red list for threatened species. And from my findings, I'll generate outputs with conservation and management application that will be directly relevant to the revision of the Blue Whale Conservation Management Plan in Australia. These outputs will also aid the implementation of new BIAs, as I said, and provide crucial information for environmental impact assessments related to offshore industry activities. So just a bit to do. And I just really briefly, before I finish, wanted to brush on the Marine Industry Mentoring Network that my friend Emily and I have created. We've started about 4 years ago, but we've just launched our website. I'm not sure if you guys have your phones on you in class or not, probably not, but you can scan the QR code, or you can go onto our Instagram or our websites, www.mimnetwork.com.au. And like many other industries, when Emily and I were initially looking for work, we found it quite challenging to gain opportunities and experience to upskill in different areas as well. Because when you hand in your resume these days, employers are looking for all of the experience, up to 4 years when you graduate, but they're not willing to give you the chance to create that experience or give you the opportunity. And this is what inspired the MIM network. So we hope to fill some of these gaps and provide people with real life experience in different areas of the industry. At the moment, we have whale internships on board tourism vessels, similar to what I did for my honours. So you can almost try before you buy. see if you like the industry before you commit to it for such a long time, and also seek advice from more experienced mentors in their field that are paving the way for the next level of marine scientists. So if you or anyone are interested in potentially starting a career in marine science, please hit us up. We're so happy to chat. Give us a message, or check us out on our website. But thank you very much for listening. Are there any questions? Right. Do I recommend TAFE pathway? I don't even know the options for TAFE, to be fair. I definitely wouldn't say no. And I can look into it more, because it doesn't matter how you get there or start your career. Like for me, I started out in tourism, and my friend Emily started out in marine consulting before I did, and we both ended up applying for PhDs and getting them. So I don't think it matters where you start out in your career, as long as you have passion and you're interested, then you're more likely to, continue on and finish that course. So I wouldn't rule it out, and university isn't for everyone. And there's lots of other ways to get into the marine industry that don't require a university degree as well. And sometimes real life experience can be just as valuable as studying. So definitely wouldn't rule out TAFE. Had a few beaching in Albany. Beaching is a tricky one. So as a car can crash for multiple reasons, it's the same for beached animals. There's lots of different reasons that they beach. Noise pollution, to an extent, could be impacting their hearing, and then that disorientates them being able to communicate and navigate in an area. Most of the species that beach are usually offshore species that aren't used to navigating coastal waters, so they can get disorientated quite easily. One of the colleagues at CMST, he has just been x-raying some of the heads of the pilot whales that beached in Dunsborough recently. I don't know if you guys heard of that one. It was after chains. It was this Easter. And he's doing that to see if it actually is an inner ear thing that's caused by noise pollution or something else. There were also necropsies done to see if there was any heavy metals or other factors that may be influencing the population. And for pilot whales, they're really emotional, intelligent animals, and they have a matriarchal society, so they all follow the lead female. And when this happens, they will all follow her. And it was actually quite shocking when we were down there. Like, you can almost hear the cries of the pilot whales, but fortunately, for the case with us, there was 150 that were re-swam, and then they went further offshore and they didn't re-beach. So we don't think it was contributed potentially to noise pollution. But again, you can't rule it out. And there's a lot more work needing to be done in this space. You mentioned identifying whales via skin pigment. Can sun exposure influence/change the skin pigment? Sun exposure can impact the whale skin. So southern right whales, they tend to log at the surface and they can actually get sunburnt. And then that forms scarring on their skin that we can then use, though the pigment changes over time. So we try to use features that don't change. So on the shape of the dorsal fin, if there's any nicks or notches, they're more prominent, whereas scarring can fade over time. And it's a little bit harder to use to ID the animals. Blue whales can be up to 90 years old. Is that the oldest whale? I think there was a study that showed one about 104, likely even older than that. So it's crazy to think that some of the whales alive now may have been alive during the whaling times, and they've lived through that, which I find crazy. And the way they age whales is different for each species, but they can actually use the inner earwax plug. It creates little rings, kind of like the growth rings on trees or the otoliths in fish. And that's how they can measure it. And then the earwax also holds chemicals, so they can look at the hormone and stress levels. And they found the stress levels during whaling times peaked significantly for many whales. But 90 is the kind of most well-known age for oldest blue whales. What is the variance in age expectancy between whales? Do you mean different whale species, or I don't know the exact variance. Humpbacks are a little bit younger. Orcas can be quite old age as well, for the females, because they're the ones that hand the hunting techniques down to the juveniles, so they have to live longer. But usually in the animal kingdom, the females will die off once they're no longer can create viable young. But the actual age variances, I'm not too sure. I know the bigger whales live longer. There's a lot of studies going on with engineering of different props to reduce vibration to reduce sound and noise pollution. So yeah, it is influential, and they're trying to incorporate these new technologies into whale watching vessels to reduce speed, and same with ships. They're even trying to move to like the sun-powered and wind-generated ships with big sails, which I don't know how well they're going with that yet. But yeah, the prop studies are really influential on noise. How much can a whale eat in one day, Blue? Good question. Humpbacks generally only feed when they're at their migration, their feeding grounds down in subantarctic and Antarctic waters, and they'll gorge on around 2 ton of krill every day, and they'll put on all of the weight that they've lost from their migration of heading north, which can be about 40 to 50% of their entire body weight, which is huge amounts. But then blue whales, because of their size and they have to sustain their metabolism all year round, they feed a lot more regularly, and they can actually engulf their whole body weight of water in one mouthful, so over 100 ton, and then they filter that out to keep up to 2 ton of krill in one mouthful. So that's what a humpback eats in a whole day, a blue whale will eat in one go. So when they do eat, though, the energy expended of actually lunging for the food is quite large, so they have to ensure that there's enough food there to make it worth it. It's like a trade-off. So yeah, blue whales eat a lot. But the good thing is that their poo also contributes to the nutrients to create more krill. Have there been many whale attacks on people? Define attack. There's been some orcas that I'm not sure if you guys have seen on the news that have been attacking propellers on some boats. There's been no encounters in the wild where orcas have attacked humans, but they have in captivity. And there have been multiple times where people have been swimming and humpbacks have gone to lunge feed and engulfed a person, but then they have to spit them out because their esophagus is literally about the size of a grapefruit. So even if they tried to eat a person, we wouldn't physically fit. So yeah, they're not attacks, but people have been inside a whale's mouth before. So watch out when you're snorkeling. One guy actually even thought he had been attacked by a shark because everything just went black. And there's a photo of his feet and his fins hanging out the humpback's mouth. And then he was spat out a few seconds later.